Hello, welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. So today's podcast is something having to do with my life, right? I try to be authentic. I try to share from, um, real space. And today's podcast is exactly that. So I'm going to be talking about grief, friends, and avatars. So my partner and I of 6.5 years have decided to split. We certainly put in a lot of work, and a lot of the tools that I talk about have been developed from that relationship. And this is the first time that I have talked about it publicly, except for on my yoga church. I hinted at it. So I have had my partner on my podcast before. I talked about his podcast, Armanites. And with respect to his privacy, I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of what happened. But, sometimes things come to a completion and it's for the best. It's for the best for both people to grow. And sometimes there's levels of incompatibility that you try to work past, and try as you might, and sometimes it doesn't work out. That being said, I learned so much, I grew so much, I have really improved my communication skills, my ability to have my autonomy, certainly, because that was very important in our relationship. And, sometimes it's just hard, and I'm definitely going through it. I've cried more than I haven't cried this much since my mother passed. So grief is not just when somebody dies. It can mean, when somebody is not part of your life anymore, even if you still love them, and you just both recognize that it's not for the best long term. It just wouldn't pan out, and you can continue to fight for it over and over again, but sometimes in the long run it just doesn't work out. And so I show up here at my podcast without shame. I show up here as a real human being. I show up here as somebody who uses her tools, but when you have a situation that involves both people, sometimes that there needs to be collaboration and cooperation and reciprocation on both ends. And if you don't have that, it can, at a certain point, be the end of the road. So, grief. Grief is something that I typically process well. Doesn't mean that when it comes up, it's not easy. It is. And even as I'm talking, I can kind of feel my wanting to retreat back into my body. But I'm breathing deep. If you notice, I'm sighing a lot, and that's kind of helping me to process. So, reclaiming and reestablishing who I am without that person. It's possible, even if you've maintained a good amount of autonomy, that you still do have an identity together as a couple. And when that identity is broken, and then your ego, your the faculties of your brain that are looking for some kind of identification, it's not there. But when you go there with the mind, and it's like, oh wait, oh, we don't have this anymore. I'm like, thanks, brain. Thank you so much for reminding me. So I've had waves of grief come up, of remembering the good times, you know, thinking, oh, what could I have done different? Is there anything? And of course, every relationship, there's certain things that you could have done different. Everyone has blind spots, everyone. And I know that I did a lot of inner work. I think my podcast is reflective of that. Again, I mentioned a lot of the tools that I've shared have been through real life experience. And so I'm going through it, working through it, the grief. when I sit with it and I get to the other side, there is a love. There is more of an acceptance. There's less of a tension around the body. Sometimes things like this require patience. I'm not known to be the most patient person, so it's teaching me that. And because of the pain, I have had to go inward to an even greater extent. Last week, or this past weekend, I led a silent retreat, which was beautiful, and yeah, it healed me as much as it healed everybody else. So, I am engaging in the activities that are helping me to process. I remember a friend of mine, Lynette. Hi, Lynette. And she had lost someone in her life, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, I'm doing the yoga, I'm doing the coaching, I'm doing all the things, and I still feel sad. This is overwhelming." And I said, just because you do those things doesn't mean you're not going to feel it. But the hope is that you get through it with more skill and more grace, and you don't implode maybe as much. And I can tell you that in this breakup, nobody is the bad guy. I'm not a victim. I'm not trash talking. And that's, like earlier on, before it was Coach Erin, that may have been, especially the victim part, because, you know, people want to, oh my God, what happened? What happened? And there is a temptation to, you want to be on their good graces and get sympathy and stuff. And that is typically in the drama triangle why you would want to go into the victim. Like, oh my God, he was terrible. And look what he did to me. And I didn't do anything. And so, not going to go there because that's not the case, right? Like, we're both good people. We're both on our own paths. And sometimes it's hard to formulate what you would like as far as your dreams, your goals, and things together. And, sometimes that collaboration and that sort of like joint coming together just, isn't happening in the way that you would like it. And every relationship requires sacrifice and compromise and communication and all these things. And, the thing is, we were doing that, but there was just something, there was sort of the end of the roadblock. So I'm in this process of, again, reclaiming who I am. And like, I have a strong sense of who I am, right? It's not like I was just lost in the other person, but there's threads and there's certain percentages of yourself that does get associated with the relationship with the other person. And I'm aiming to please. I try to help. Like, I love people, right? Love to help people grow and heal. That's like my jam, as you know, listening to my podcast. So, but like, when you don't have that anymore, and again, I have it in a lot of other ways, right? My students, my friends, like, I'm like so incredibly grateful for all the friends that I have that come to me, and that I'm able to help. And then, like, I have amazing friends that I can go to as well. And I'm so grateful. And a lot of them have been either through my coaching school or they're a coach. And so I can really lean on them and they can help me work through things. Like my student Jay yesterday, he was amazing. We had a coach call, and one of the students, she had an emergency, so she wasn't able to be there. And part of me was like, oh, yay, I get to get coached. Right? And I have my personal coaches, right? So, and I coach myself, but there's something about the method, the techniques that I've compiled and put together that, I mean, I love them because they work, and they work really well. So my student Jay was, kind of peeling away the layers, and it came down to like, what do you miss the most? And I thought, besides, like cuddles and that kind of thing, but I miss like that joyous version of me that was completely unguarded, that would come out and just dance around and be like complete goofball. And I do that to a certain extent with some of my closest friends because in that moment, I'm a kid. I'm not Coach Erin. I'm not the owner of Thrive Yoga and Fitness. I'm not a podcaster. I'm not an author. And, step away from those things. I just become this sort of like touching this childhood version of myself. And he said, well, how come you can't do that on your own? Like, what's keeping you from doing that? And it made me think and stop, which is what a good coach, like, asks questions. That's what happens. Like, you go inward. And I think I was so used to um, like kind of performing and reserving that for others that, like, at the end of the day, I had less reserved for myself. And so it just, like, that question really struck me. And so yesterday after the coach call, I have this big house to myself now. So I turn on some music and I'm like dancing around, doing martial arts, doing some choreography, which is stuff I love. I'm a body movement artist. I have been since I was 13. I've been studying sacred sciences since I was a teen. And so that's where my happy place is. That's where my joy is. And so I tapped into that. I tapped into her and it made things so much better. And that joyous version of myself doesn't have to just be reserved for other people or like when I'm sharing it in tandem. It can be solo. And so it's, I'm an extrovert. I love being around people. Like my whole career is built around it. And I'm pretty sure I'm one of those people that was made to be in like a commune. But right now, my journey is like I'm going to be spending more time alone. And so enjoying my own company is really important. So, anyways, fast forward. This morning I woke up, and mornings are hard because no cuddles. My cat is not very cuddly. Like, he's only cuddly on his terms, typical cat. And if I grabbed him, he'd be like, whoa, whoa, lady, So I have to kind of like, get myself going. And my brain would start to go into the, oh, what ifs, and maybe you could have, da, 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 da. But it's over. So it's really not. There's a certain point where introspection, like kind of getting to that level of like going over and over and over again, it's the law of diminishing returns. I know I'm introspective. I know I'm reflective. I know that I take accountability. But at a certain point, you're just almost like taking on more accountability. Like maybe I could have solved it. And I would just draw myself back into this black hole. And then I feel like so lonely and like um, guilt that is not mine to carry. So I felt myself kind of going into that space and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not how I want to start my day. And so I remembered what my student and friend Jay said, and I went inward and I found this version of me, and she was actually wearing this gray sweater, which, by the way, I know this sweater is not going to win any awards, like fashion awards. Um, it is, however, has a button on the side that heats it up, and so when I go to New York in a couple of weeks, I will not be freezing my ass off. So, but in the image, she was wearing this gray sweater, and she was at the trail opening of a local park I love to go to, and she had so much confidence, and she's kind of like, come, come on. And I started smiling because it was this version of me that I present to other people. And I think I had been presenting it so much and overextending her that she didn't have any more bandwidth to give me. And so I tapped into her and had a great morning, listening to music, singing, doing all the things. Did some martial arts this morning, which I love, and met up with some friends and students. So by me creating that avatar who was embodying confidence, support, love, and almost like there's this image of the Ardhanarishwara, and it's like the half Shiva Shakti. And this version of me like has the masculine qualities of like, hey, I got you, but like the feminine of like, hey, you want a hug? So combined. And so call it imaginary friend, call it avatar, whatever it is, but that really helped me today and yesterday, and it's continuing to help me. And it's sort of giving an image to that universal energy that we all have within us that is supporting, that is loving, that is caring, and giving me the support that I need during this time. And so here I am, y'all. I'm in pain. I'm grieving. But I'm using my tools as a teacher of yoga and a spiritual teacher. This is how I teach. Real life application. When your heart is breaking in a million pieces, can you find the tools and can you use them? And sometimes you need help from your community. You need reminders. And it's funny because Jay coached me in all the ways that I used to coach him and still do. And so it was so beautiful. It was like such a proud moment to have my students be able to give back to them what I've given them, and with so much compassion. And he was so happy to, he's like, I'm so happy to do this for you, Erin. And you help so many people. So I'm accepting love, I'm receiving. And if you hear this podcast and you want to reach out and just say, hey, it's going to be okay, or hey, I'm a huge fan, or probably if you don't like me, but just keep it to yourself. Why are you listening to my podcast? But the level of maturity that I have now with these things of like, my pain is mine. No one's to blame. I'm not a victim. But I am going to use my tools and I am going to work through this. I'm going to process this grief, and I'm going to also remember to look at the bright side of like the things that I do get to have now, and having gratitude for all the people around me, and walking through my own fire, like walking through the fire of loneliness, of grief, of maybe some guilt, because there's always something that you could have done better in your relationships, and I'll be the first one to say that about mine. So hey, I know a lot of people around me that are going through something like this. So if you're listening to this and it resonates with you, you're meant to listen to this. And I hope some of the things that I shared today would help you, even if it's just like camaraderie and knowing that you're not alone. You're not alone in your pain, your suffering, and that you're so loved. And this avatar work of like just, picturing and then embodying this, for me, it was like a little version of me. I've had different avatars though that weren't me. But you're the one that has to pick yourself up and keep going. You're the one that controls your own inner dialogue. And certainly you choose your thoughts and your feelings, even if it's subconsciously, even if it's unconsciously, you have the power. So again, I hope that this podcast, if you're listening to this, maybe you needed to hear this today, and I'm so happy to offer this to you. Just a couple of notes, my little plug at the end. I am doing a yoga teacher training starting in February. I'm doing a 200 and 300. They're sort of like overlaid on each other with different aspects. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me, Erin at erincoach.com. I am going to India in June. I have 2 spaces left, just 2. Once they're gone, they're gone. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me, again, Erin at erincoach.com. And finally, I'm going to Japan in November, and we have probably about 6 or 7 spots left for that. So if you're interested in that, again, reach out to me, Erin at erincoach.com. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Namaste.